Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to be a continuation of a previous lesson from the third chapter in the book of Job. We made it all the way up to the first 10 verses. We're going to take this one from verse 11 all the way home to 26. Now, the first 10 verses are imprecatory in nature, amounting to the issuing of a cursing. More specifically, Job curses the night that he was born and the night that he was conceived. The portion we're going to cover today is a lamentation, which is a poetic expression, mournful expression of just grief and agony and all the negative emotions of life. And it is really the source of his lamentation is his own life. Job's repugnance with his own life compels him to desire and romanticize death. And what could compel a man of faith to desire death above life? First off, this is not unusual to Job. Moses and Elijah both wished for death, and the reason they did is because they thought they were the only faithful one in a nation of unfaithful people. And Jonah also prays for death when he is the instrument of repentance, which spares his dreaded temporal enemy, the Ninevites, from their sure destruction, keeps them alive. But the only other saint in the Old Testament to curse the day of his own birth, as far as I know, is Jeremiah, and he does this in the 20th verse of 20th chapter of the book which bears his name. Now, the reason that Job, these men were ministers, and they were, and the failure or success in Jonah's case compelled them to loathe their life to the point of wishing to be dead. But Job's situation is a little different. Job is a model, an exemplar of piety, pointed to with pride by God himself to Satan, who in the heavenly scene is scouring about to and fro the earth with implicit pride in its corruptibility and its corruption. And Yahweh points to Job, and Satan says that Job is a fraud. He is a sham. You have to pay. He is only faithful. He is only pious because he has prospered. He is only righteous because he is rich. Take that all away from him, and he will curse you to your face. And Yahweh consents to the temptation that the idea is to tempt Job to blaspheme Yahweh to himself, and he passes the test even after the loss of his 7 sons and 3 daughters. His 10 children died at once, all congregating at the eldest born son. A gust of wind knocked down the structure. Also, lightning from heaven came down and struck all his sheep, and his remaining agricultural animals were stolen and seized by Chaldean and Sabaean raiders, respectively. But in 121, he says, "Naked I came into the earth, and naked I shall return. Yahweh taketh away, Yahweh giveth, and Yahweh taketh away. Blessed be the name of Yahweh." So Job passes the test. Then in the second chapter, Satan ups the ante, adds to the bet, the dimension of the bet, by saying, well, he still has his health. Let me ravage his health, and then he will certainly curse to your faith. And Yahweh knows the capacity of Job's ability to endure, so he freely consents to the adversary's nefarious suggestion. Job is left with loathsome skin boils head to toe to add injury to insult. So he had it all and he lost it all, and the state of his life, he's scratching these ugly, prosperous, or prominent rather, accumulated pus of skin boils with fragmented pattern shape, so his life can't get any lower. And then his wife suggests, as left alive by Satan, left alive by God, so that he could procreate with the same number of children that he had lost in the end, but left alive by Satan to serve as his mouthpiece. And she says, "Do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse Elohim and die." The first thing, Job passes the test twice. He says, "You speak as a foolish one. Shall we accept good and not evil from Elohim?" But the die, he's very much in agreement, but he's not prepared. Job is a man of faith, and he was not prepared to meet his maker uninvited, but he did desire death, but he was not prepared for suicide. So in the third chapter, we learn the nature of his initial reaction. After a 7-day period of mourning and stunned silence in the company of 3 friends, who we eventually hear from. These are Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, Zophar the Naamanite, each of whom have entire chapters devoted to their monologic musings, 3 for the first 2, 2 for the second. And we also hear from Job 9 times. The third chapter is the first one, but it's after a 7-day period. So after stunned silence, he breaks up. The author of Job qualifies the nature that he will curse the day of his birth in the first verse. Then we hear from Job in the third verse, and he says, "Let the day perish on which I was born. In the night it was said, a male child has been conceived." He curses 2 days, the nights that he was born and the night that he was conceived. He wished that he was never even conceived. He wished that he was never even an idea, had no life, no motion, no activity, that he never existed at all. Let that day be darkness. Let not Eloah from above seek it, nor let light shine upon it. Darkness is equated with death, and light, the language of this echoes Genesis 1:3, let there be light. He is reversing the blessing of God to an asking of a cursing on himself. Let the day be darkness, let it be taken away. Let Elohim not be, Eloah be not moved and motivated to fulfill it, and don't let the light of day shine on it. Let the darkness and the shadow of death buy it back. Let a cloud dwell on it. Let all the blackness of day frighten it. So once more, he describes death in terms of darkness, and in the scriptural symbolism, darkness is Satan is the ruler of the kingdom of darkness. Darkness is negative. Darkness is evil. Darkness is sin, Satan, evil, and hell. The outer darkness is what hell consists of, and he's asking that the same experience of the wicked once they burn in the lake of fire and are cast out into the outer darkness happened to him on the night that he was born. That night, let the darkness seize it. So the night and the day that he was born, he pronounces and issues curses on them. He wishes that no angels sang. Every time a child is born, the angels in heaven sing. He wishes that there was no one to sing for him that day. Let those who curse it curse the day, who are ready to stir up Leviathan. In the ancient world, there were professional practitioners who issued curses on people. Balaam was such a one. We meet him beginning in the 22nd chapter of the book of Numbers. He was a Mesopotamian soothsayer who was hired by Balak, the king of the Moabites, to issue a curse on the Israelite nation, which is passing through his nation, and he cannot curse who God has not blessed. He is interrupted by God, but that's another story entirely. Leviathan would have been a mythical sea creature believed by the the Middle Eastern Mediterranean dwelling people. They all shared him in common. He was a mythical beast, seven-headed monster, sea serpent of mammoth size, and he's asking those who are skilled enough and powerful enough to curse this untamable beast that none of us can injure or kill or tame or domesticate. Let them join him in the chorus of voices that are cursing the day that he was born. Now this is the 11th verse, the lesson itself, and remember that what we just read is imprecatory in nature, and what we are about to read amounts to a lamentation. Why did I not die from the womb, come forth from the body and expire? This is the first of 4 why questions. Wisdom literature asks the questions to which there are no easy answers to. Job, in the exquisite agony of his pain and in his dilemma, is questioning what good was it even born. Now, Job had experienced the blessings of life. He was prosperous, he was successful, he was influential, he was prestigious. He flourished in business because he had a reputation for honesty, but in spite of having lived as many years as he did, we are not privy to the time in Job's life. We know that he lived to be 140 years by the 42nd chapter. We don't know when the events in here took place, but forever. In any case, most of his life he had a life worth living, but the past 7 days, the exquisite agony of the past 7 days are so profound that he is considering it better that he had never been born and even experienced life and all the blessings and the benefits he did. That's how much pain and agony he is, having everything and lost it all at once. His experience is without precedent or parallel in the human existence. Why were there knees to receive me, or breasts for me to nurse on? These are blessings. Woe unto the child who does not have a mother to nurse them or a knee to bear. That just doesn't happen in the course of nature. So Job is questioning. This is the second of his 4 whys. that, why was I even born? What is the meaning of life? What is the purpose of life if it all amounts to a pain? Was my righteousness for nothing? I did nothing to deserve this. I did nothing to provoke it. I did nothing to merit the calamity that was sent on me abruptly, inexplicably, and without an explanation. So before he can even articulate the why was this suffering spent, he's just wondering why he's even alive. Why, life stinks so bad for him that he prefers the sweet release of death from the exquisite agony of life. For now I would have been lying in peace. I would have slept. Then I would have been at rest. Job's description of death is based on the limited data of the primitive age in which he lived. The Old Testament doctrines were not as developed. And Job is also the earliest chronologically written data. He lived sometime in the patriarchal era, so he doesn't know, but he is correct to describe death as a sleeping. It's a rest from the constant motion and activity of life, and it is a rest, physical rest when we cease from motion. But he is in the opposite of peace. He is at war. He is in pain. He is struggling. He is hurting. He is lamenting. He is mourning, and he is detesting his own life to the point of wishing death. The peace of death, the peace that the pain has ended, would bring him such peace to his heart that he is literally praying for it as he speaks. With kings and counselors of the earth who built ruins for themselves. Kings and counselors, the prominent and the base, are alike joined in Sheol. Sheol is the destination of death, according to the Hebrews. But Job does have a premonition of heaven. In the 19th chapter, he endorses the doctrine of a bodily resurrection. He has faith that he will visibly behold his Redeemer in his flesh, walking about the earth to judge and vindicate him. But all the kings and all the great men of the world who built cities that once flourished, they are ruins now. Look at all over the world. These once flourishing civilizations are reduced to ruin within the passage of time because their power wanes, and nature and other armies and other external forces contribute to the collapse and decay of these monuments that were once forces to be reckoned with. But death is the great equalizer, and death comes to every kingdom the same as every individual. Or with rulers who had gold, who had filled their houses with silver. Job was described as a ruler at one point. By that it was meant that he was looked to for judgment by the local denizens of Uz because of his reputation for honesty, fairness, and justice. There was no orphan or widow whose case he would not hear. We read in the 31st chapter. But the rulers who had gold, Job, he is not described as rich in gold. He is described as rich in agricultural animal. When his wealth is listed in the 3rd verse of the 1st chapter, he has thousands and hundreds of every species. But, he would be with them. And, some of these people, these palaces are literally filled with silver, some of the kings who have ruled the earth. But where are they now? They are dead, and their wealth went to someone else. Or as a hidden untimely birth, as infants who never saw light. So the 13th through the 16th verse is a single sentence which closes in the question. He is preferring to be a stillborn. A stillborn is one who does not make it past the mother's womb, an untimely birth, as infant who never saw light. That means they are born dead, but they do make it out of the womb. And Solomon in Ecclesiastes 4:3, given the state and nature of the oppression of the world, describes the stillborn to be a superior existence than anyone living or born. But he makes that observation from the top of the world, while Job is at the bottom. His wish to have been stillborn. Solomon was, he had all the wealth, all the wisdom, all the power, perfect luxury and ease. Whereas Job was once wealthy, once prosperous, but his profound pain places him at the bottom rung of life. There the wicked cease raging, and there the weary are at rest. The wicked will cease raging in the afterlife because they will be disembodied. The fuller developed doctrine of hell in the Old Testament is that the wicked, their immortal soul lingers, but they don't have a body with which to commit wickedness in. But Job describes Sheol as a place where the wicked are on a leash and the weary are at rest. That means they are at rest from the toil and the motion and the exhaustion of life. Job is literally exhausted. The physical symptoms of his disease are described, are the details of which we read in the subsequent monologues. The prisoners rest together. They do not hear the voice of the oppressor. The fact and existence of oppression on earth is inextricably connected with earth. Where people are, there is oppression. It is the fact of human history, and it speaks about human stupidity. For all our powers of intellect, we invested on oppressing others and creating these systems of class where some people have it all and other people have nothing. But that and death is the great equalizer monetarily and existence-wise. It levels the playing field, because all the power that the kings had in the earth and all the wealth that the wealthy have on the earth will not be there to assist them or to give them any advantage. Hence, they will be free from the burden of oppression. But some will be oppressed by Satan in hell. The small and great are there, and the servant is free from his master. There is a democracy to death. It comes to us all equally, and it makes us all equal as it comes. Nevertheless, it does not come to us all in the same way, but it comes to us all the same, the small and great, the rich, the high, the poor, the low, anyone in between. They're all there, and the servant is no longer in service to his master. He is free. There is no hierarchy of human existence in the afterlife. It is a great equalizer. It is a perfect democracy. There are no oppression. There is no hierarchy. There are no servants. There are no masters. Everyone is one and equal, and this is a source of delight for the one who is in servitude in life. Job was a master who employed servants, but as he describes that his servants no longer look at him or listen to him eventually. So what good is being a master when one's servants? But all of Job's servants most of them were casualties in the first chapter. The ones he employed lots of people, lots of employees, and lots of servants who tended to his vast agricultural animals. But they all died by the raiders, the Sabaean and the Chaldean raiders slew them all, and only one left to survive. So I think there's about 4 events in which in rapid succession in the first chapter, in which one servant survives to tell Job, and they are one after another. So it's literally just this constant motion of bad news. Why does he give light to the sufferer and life to the bitter of soul? Job equates life with light, and this equation is certainly scriptural. The light giver, Elohim, is light, and he is also life. He is the source of life, and everything that is and moves is an animate creature owes its existence to him. He alone is self-created. But he's saying, why is there any light to the suffering? Job certainly can't see the light. He is in too exquisite agony to see any light, to have any hope to him who is clearly suffering. And he is more bitter in soul is an understatement. He is beyond bitter at this point, so much so that why would he even give him life when he devalues and degrades life as it is, the way that he does, having experienced it as he is now, who are waiting for death, but it does not come, and search for it more than treasures. In the book of Revelation, some of the calamities, the end-time calamities, are going to be so cataclysmic that people will long for death but not find it. And that's Job's situation right now. He figures it can't get any worse. He figures that he's going to eventually degenerate into death because of the state of the sickness that he is in, that it's eventually going to claim his life. He is waiting for death, and he is expecting it to happen, and he is praying for the hastening of it. He just wants to get his last words out. As far as Job knows, these might be his last words, but as the narrative unfolds, he lives to be a ripe old age. and search for it more than treasures. Now, the 28th chapter in the book of Job is the most prolific, or the main, most information on the doctrine of wisdom. Remember, Job belongs in the category of Old Testament wisdom literature, and the equivalent would be the 8th chapter of Proverbs and the 7th of Ecclesiastes. And the 28th chapter begins with describing men's endeavors. They search diligently for the treasures underneath the earth, the gold and the semi-precious stones and the precious materials and commodities that come from under the earth. How much better would men be if they search for wisdom? Where can one even find wisdom? He describes the ingenuity of man in designing the contraptions that enable them to navigate underneath mountains with dark caves just to get these things that are hidden and rare. But where does one find wisdom? And the answer is that wisdom comes from God himself. He is the source of all wisdom, and to fear him is the foundation of wisdom, and to depart from evil is the mark of understanding. And these verbs are described of Job in the first and second chapter by the author of Job and by God himself. So Job was a wise man by those measures. Who rejoice exceedingly. They are glad when they find the grave. Job longs to be among the ones. He longs to sing in that chorus, to join the choir and the fray, to rejoice exceedingly, to greet merrily those who are already dead, because he's sick of life. He's beyond sick of it. There's nothing to live for, no hope, no remedy, no solution, no antidote, and no cure to what ails him. And the worst part of it is he doesn't even know why. He knows that he's suffering, but he doesn't know why it happened. So he would rejoice exceedingly so if he were to meet his grave and find it and be there. Why does he give light to a man in whose way he has hidden, and whom Eloah has hedged in? That word hedge appears in the first chapter. Satan describes the hedge of protection which exists around Job's material prosperity, his temporal possessions, and he says, remove this hedge. But now Job is feeling hedged in. He's feeling that there's a wall around him. So the wall was the security that God gave around all his possessions. Now he's feeling walled in by God, by him. He's feeling hedged in by Eloah. And he has no light, no hope, no expectation, he has his faith and he has his integrity, but he has these are the two things that Satan cannot take from Job. He certainly could take it from a lesser man, but Job still loathes his life and longs for death. For sighing comes before I eat, and my groanings pour out like water. He cannot even enjoy eating food. First off, he probably has a minimal appetite just because he is so depressed. But when he brings himself to eat, he is just it's so laborious, and just the chewing and the masticating of the food is somewhat more than he would prefer to handle at a time like this. His groanings, he's just exuding groanings and grief and pain and agony and just terrible, terrible wounds from his skin boils. So his groaning is pouring out like water from a river, like water from a dam, and we certainly are being hit by the metaphorical water of his groanings. For that which I greatly feared has come upon me, and that which I dreaded has overtaken me. Job had no reason to expect this sudden calamity to come upon him. Nevertheless, he was living in his worst nightmare. This was, the greatest fear, to have children and lose it, and to have possessions and property and prestige and lose them, and then to have one's health and just be reduced to such pain. The state of pain severely affects, the severity of the state of pain does affect Job's mind, clearly. But he is living in his worst nightmare, and he has no control it. He can't contain it, and he can't comprehend it. He doesn't have an answer. In this, he is unable to articulate why. So the articulation of the more hopeful aspects of Job's speech do not come until after a response to his comforters, the first of whom is Eliphaz the Temanite, who we hear from in the 4th and 5th chapter. I have not been at ease, nor I have been undisturbed, nor have I been at rest, yet trouble comes. Ease, undisturbed, rest, and ease and rest are things we want. Comfort and just security and rest. But being disturbed and trouble came unprovoked, unasked for, unmerited, undeserved. Job had done nothing wrong, yet he is on the receiving end of a retaliatory punishment from the hand of God. God is not on his vocabulary yet. The word God or Elohim or Yahweh does not appear in the third chapter. Job's focus and fixation and concentration is on his own life. And if we only look at ourselves, we will not have the answer. We will loathe life to the point of wanting to die. Though when we look to God, we have a reason to live and a purpose to live. And there is our hope and our faith and our salvation. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Stay tuned until next time. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.